From the instructor, August 1962, I found a story about courage. It begins this way. I've known some very brave men in my time, but there's a difference between physical bravery and moral courage. Bravery is a temporary manifestation. It flashes forth to meet a sudden challenge. Moral courage, however, has the dimension of duration. The latter may be less spectacular than the sudden type of heroism, but it's more important because it endures. It is the month-to-month, year-to-year, steady, sustained devotion to duty and principle, as opposed to self-interest, that may never make any headlines, but without which the world would be a dark and dangerous place. The author of these words was J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI. He was writing about an LDS man, Samuel P. Calley, and because I've seen several references in Lucy's papers to Samuel P. Calley, I've wondered if he's a relative, and maybe some of you can tell me later. He was also, Samuel Calley was a returned missionary, a college grad, and a hard worker. And I submit that these same words, moral courage has the dimension of duration, should be applied to Lucy. She began life, and one of her records, she says, I was born between 11:30 and the post office. Actually, I was born November 24, 1914, to Frederick Granger Williams and Nancy Abigail Clement Williams. She grew up with good music. Her grandfather, Darius, was a noted choir leader. Her mother played the clavichord, the harpsichord, the organ, and even the accordion. She played by ear mostly, and Lucy had this same talent. Her grandfather taught her how to chord and use harmony, and then she would pick out any tune that she heard on the radio or elsewhere in church. Lucy also grew up with a mother who taught her children the gospel every day. Every single night, she said, was home evening where she discussed with children around the table whatever characters came to mind from the Bible and the Book of Mormon. She made them live for us, Lucy wrote. Lucy had a good sense of humor, but one time she became the butt end of the joke. In the interview with Argenta, she told about how Argenta's father and his buddy Earl decided to trap some animals. Lucy wanted to follow them, but they always sent her home, said she was too little. And one day they said, well, come on, you can come, you're big enough. But you have to do as we tell you. And she says, okay. So she followed along, and when they got to the trap, they told her to open it. She did, and it was a skunk. Her mother had to bury her clothes. Lucy said she was baptized underneath the tabernacle when she was 8. After that, she was often baptized for the dead. She'd be baptized for as many as 59 people in one day. She said they'd bring us little glasses of juice and things. They talked very fast when doing work for the dead. Lucy taught herself to tap dance. This came in handy a number of times through her life. She wrote skits, then acted in them for school programs, in Men and Gleaners stake events, and even for the Red Cross Entertainment when she worked at Camp Bill at the Red Cross Hospital. Her talents included working as a secretary for Utah's Governor Ma when he hosted the Western States Governor Conference. And through the years, Lucy learned to draw and paint with watercolors by picking the brains of those she admired. She was quick to learn new skills and had extraordinary retention and nearly perfect recall. She studied basic words and phrases in Spanish, Italian, Croatian, Serbian, Polish, and even English. She told me once she wanted to learn Russian if she had the time, but then she told me another story. She said that she and a roommate had a friend's dog staying with them at their home in Belgrade, and the dog was well trained. He'd obey any command given by his owner. But the one thing about this dog was he would attack anyone who spoke Russian. Otherwise, he was a friendly dog. And then, let's see, she says, this is not in order exactly. She says, I met Vincent, I don't know how to say his name, Broussard, a dashing young man who took me to the temple. He was later killed in action in World War II. Our marriage was very short, and so in the 1970s, I petitioned the prophet, President Kimball, to reverse the sealing. Lucy graduated from Secretarial and Business College in Salt Lake City. She never did anything in a normal fashion. She skipped grades in school. She went skiing in Peru at 1,800 feet without oxygen.
1,000 feet.
She said 18,000, but is there really?
Yeah.
All right, 18,000. She even said, I'll change my, I'll take out the comma. She even sat in the right seat of the plane once, and she flew it for 20 minutes or so. She told me she did that, but I didn't ever find out if that was a commercial flight or some other flight. She worked for a power company in Florida, and I saw this picture that she had cut out from the newspaper, and she was with men who were working on power lines. This was the first time that the Florida company had ever allowed women to work with the men doing that. But there was Lucy, and she had her picture taken, so I guess she did it. She went to intelligence school, and she graduated, and she was sent to South America, then to Belgrade, where she had a harrowing experience on the wrong train ride and another one with the future Pope of the Catholic Church. Okay. And it was in Belgrade where Lucy met Lou, and it was at the 4th of July, at an embassy dance given by the ambassador at his home. The ambassador had borrowed a wooden dance floor from the French embassy and put it in the backyard. Lucy was asked to dance by a fellow named Bill, when in Lucy's words, Lou suddenly ran out from the crowd and tapped my partner on the shoulder and said, "You've danced with her long enough, this is my dance." Their first marriage was a regular communist ceremony with embassy officials as witnesses. The Communist Commissar of Police for Yugoslavia was the official. Their second marriage took place in Novi Sad, about 50 miles away, in a Methodist church. Two other couples, also previously married by the Commissar of Police, traveled with them to have a church wedding. None of the 6 were Methodists, but they all felt better about being married by a man of God. Now, Lucy and Lou's third marriage was much later in Vernal, where a man with the priesthood of God sealed them for time and all eternity on April 23, 2004. After retiring from the service, Lucy longed for a home, and she drew many house plans and cut endless pictures from magazines to show exactly what she wanted. At first it seemed like they would get to build their dream home, but Lou was an inspector, so they moved a couple of times, and the property in Bountiful wasn't convenient to the work, so eventually they let it go. Lou died in 2004 in Vernal, but Lucy, after he died, was very busy with her book and her many friends. She refused to slow down. Her many interests kept her going through this difficult time of being alone. She wrote notes for her book. She collected family histories and stories. She wrote poems and songs. She played her piano and organ until arthritis and broken bones wouldn't allow it any longer. She followed politics and BYU football. She lived a life full of the gospel of Jesus Christ, even in difficult situations, wherever in the world she was at the moment. Her moral courage kept her testimony strong, and her Book of Mormon that I gave her had many indications of reading and rereading, even though her eyesight was failing. She had that steady duration needed to become a true Latter-day Saint. She had a renewed temple recommend when she died. And Richard L. Scott said at a friend's funeral, "After this life, you'll be restarted to the life that you've allowed yourself to become." And then, I was going to read one of the poems that Lucy wrote, which I think is interesting. It's the one that you chose for the back of her card. When your hair is filled with silver and your tummy's filled with gas, when your uppers and your lowers spend their evenings in a glass, then you'll have a lot of reasons to bemoan your sorry plight. But until then, don't you worry, 'cause you're strictly dynamite. I know Lucy had a great testimony. Sorry, I'm not very good with this microphone. I need some practice. But I've never had to do this before, so anyway, I have a testimony that Lucy is with her family members who've gone on before. And I know that I also have a testimony of Jesus Christ and the truth of eternal life. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.